So I watched The Last Jedi again. With the movie coming out on Blu-ray this past week, it gave me a chance to revisit the film and really see how I felt about it now that it's been about 3 months. And the thing about the film is I've watched it prior to The Last Jedi Blu-ray coming out. I had seen the movie 6 times, I believe. This is now the seventh and eighth times because I watched them again. And I did it two different ways. I watched the movie on its own, and then I watched it right after Force Awakens. So basically, what I did was I watched Force Awakens and then The Last Jedi right after. And the whole purpose was I wanted to view the film with an open mind. I wanted to watch it and kind of look at what people were saying about the movie, what they liked about it, and kind of trying to see it from their perspective. I rarely do this with movies. I usually don't watch movies this frequently, and I usually make up my mind on how I feel about them within the first 3 or 4 viewings, maybe even the first 2 viewings, or even the first one if it's really bad. And it's no secret that I hated this freaking movie to death. And I didn't hate everything about it, but there were lots of things that I hated. So I figured I'm going to go back and try it again and really now look at it, in the comfort of my own home, knowing what was coming. Is it a good movie? It still sucks. I mean, and not only does it still suck, but I feel like this time, and I don't know why this is, I was able to view a lot of the glaring errors in this movie, and really it makes me scratch my head as to how people can say this is a well-written movie when besides all the different plot holes, and let me not even get started on the fact that, and again, this is stuff you pick up on with repeated viewings, I completely forgot that when they went to Canto Bight, it was supposed to be like, 18 hours, but Rey was obviously on the island longer than that. So I'm not sure if they screwed up with when the time was supposed to happen, if the Rey scene was supposed to actually be before the beginning of the movie, because that would make sense, but they didn't show you the Rey scene until a few minutes into the movie after the first sequence at the beginning with the Dreadnought. So that was weird, but what I noticed this time, watching the film, is when I watched it the first time, alone, not with Force Awakens by itself, I picked up on the fact that it's a really poorly written movie and poorly edited movie. And this has been talked about before by tons of critics. The tone is all screwed up. There's way too many jokes that are just kind of cringy and not funny. And, I hate to say this because this is going to end up, getting me in deep water. I love John Williams, but every time I heard the Rose theme, which was new to this movie, it was that da na 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 na, like that never-ending story type theme. It actually got me upset because of how much I despise that character. Like, that song will forever be ingrained in my head as symbolizing why I don't like this movie. And it also reminded me of the kid at the end of the film. But what I noticed this time watching it, first and foremost, was that the plot with Canto Bight was meant to be character development for Finn, right? This is something that Rian Johnson said, that by the end of the film, he's going to be a character that realizes that he can't run away from things and that he has to do what he has to do for the right reasons, which is something that he kind of already realized in The Force Awakens, specifically when he stood up to Kylo Ren. So it's almost like Rian Johnson is repeating the character arc. Finn stood up to Kylo Ren. Finn and Han Solo and Chewie went to Starkiller Base to rescue Rey, but he wanted to do the right thing. So he already wasn't supposed to be a quote coward because he faced off against the Dark Warrior Kylo Ren in Force Awakens. So in this movie, the idea is that him going to Canto Bight and seeing the enslaved people and that speech that Rose gave, which was cringy as hell watching it again, is supposed to inspire him to do something good. So by the end of the film, he does something good when he tries to self-sacrifice himself, which would have been more effective if we didn't just see Vice Admiral Holdo do the same thing. It's like the same thing. Then you see the guy's about to do something right, and then freaking Rose saves him and says, no, you shouldn't do that, even though he could have ended up saving everybody. Now I've criticized that before, but it really hit me that the two subplots in this film, both the Poe Dameron and the Finn plot, went nowhere. Both of them went nowhere. The point of subplots, the point of writing out a plot of a film, is you want to go from point A to point B. And the only characters in this movie, for better or for worse, okay? Let's put our opinions aside about the creative direction here. For better or for worse, the only real A to B characters that we got here are Kylo and Luke Skywalker. Kylo went from being a subordinate to Snoke, a wannabe Darth Vader, to being the supreme leader and betraying him and taking control. That is development. That is him being different by the end of the movie than he was at the beginning of the movie. Luke Skywalker. No, I did not like the way he was treated. I hated it. In fact, it made no sense, but regardless, there was development. He went from being a guy who wanted nothing to do with the Force, who hated the fact that he became a legend. He hated the fact that people had idolized him despite him screwing up against Kylo. But by the end of the movie, he realized that that legend is what could spark, like they said many times in the movie, what could spark the new rebellion and save the galaxy potentially. Not so much him saving the galaxy with a laser sword, but him inspiring others to do so. I like that concept. I really do. I actually like that concept a lot. I just think that Skywalker was the wrong character to do that with. But the Poe Dameron plot went nowhere. So we have this, literally, we're going around in circles here. You know, Poe gets no respect from Holdo, ends up doing somewhat of a mutiny, and then at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter because Holdo still got her way, and then at the end of the day, that didn't even matter because the whole subplot with Canto Bight got them captured, which would lead to the First Order finding out through DJ, who found out through Poe, without them even realizing it, that the, you know, transports were going to escape and whatnot. So at the end of the day, it wound up actually taking away more lives and actually saving them when this whole thing was said and done, which was, again, very dumb. Now, the thing about that whole story is that, according to Rian Johnson, it's supposed to be development for Poe. I already talked about Finn earlier and how that didn't make sense. The idea is that Poe should not be such a hothead and should be more of a leader. Okay, that's fine. What they're trying to tell us is that he should not have had that mutiny and not gone behind their back to send, you know, Finn and Rose to Canto Bight. The problem is that this is supposed to be a rebellion, and the movie makes it very clear that this is now a rebellion, right? So how is Poe not standing up for what he believes in and trying to carve his own path to save lives? How is this not rebellious? Like, he, in many ways, embodies the spirit of the rebellion by, you know, doing what he did, even though it wound up being a mistake. Of course, it wasn't his fault because Holdo didn't tell him anything, by doing what he did and sending, you know, Finn and Rose to Canto Bight. Like, that to me was just, they're trying to create development, but they did it poorly. With the exception of Kylo, which we're going to get to that here in just a minute. By the end of the movie, the only difference between Rey, Finn, and Poe, who are our new leads, is that Rey realized that Kylo can't be turned, or at least she may have realized it. Maybe not. They do Reylo. Maybe she didn't realize it. Or that she now knows how to lift rocks, and she's a little bit better of a fighter. That's the development with Rey. There's not really much else there, and that she knows that her parents are junk traders and that she needs to put that aside or whatever and do the greater good, I guess. And then with Finn and Poe, they're exactly the same. There's no difference. There's none. And that is just shitty writing. You could tell, watching the movie, that Rian Johnson could not figure out what to do with these two characters. He wrote probably the Ben and the Rey stuff early, had that in the back of his head, and then just had trouble figuring out what to do with these other characters, which is why Maz Kanata has like a cameo and why Phasma got jobbed out. Like, that's why. Because, and I don't fully blame him, there's a lot of new characters and a lot of old characters. Like, Chewie didn't do anything either. R2, 3PO, that's fine though, because you have a lot of characters, but it's so obvious that he had no idea what to do with them, and I feel like maybe a better writer could have figured out something to do with them. Now, that being said, okay, when I watched episode 7 and 8 back to back, one of the things that I really discovered this time watching it, which I knew before, but it hits you more if you watch them back to back. And I know it's like 4.5 hours to do this, but trust me, I found the time. Is the characters, the way they're written in Force Awakens, some of the characters do not coincide with how they were written in Last Jedi at all. And this has nothing to do with, you know, fan theories about who Snoke is and who Rey is and all that. It has to do with just purely what we get from the Last Jedi movie and the novel. But for sake of this video, I'm going to remove the novel because we've already talked about in the past how Rian Johnson didn't give a shit about the novel and ignored half the stuff in there. Let's talk about just the movie. So the main, I think, culprits of behavior and how weird their behavior was is, to me, Snoke Poe and Finn. Now, I already mentioned earlier about how Finn's character arc already happened by the end of Force Awakens. When he stood up against Kylo Ren, that was his arc coming to an end. He knew he had to do the right thing. He knew he might lose the fight, but he was going to be brave and fight anyways. Plus, during the movie, halfway through, he fought stormtroopers who were once his friends. So the idea that he had to learn to be a warrior in Last Jedi or learn not to run away, to me, was a moot point. And I know he was obsessed with finding Rey, but he still knew what he had to do would be the right thing. So, I mean, still, it makes more sense that way. I feel like if Rian Johnson or J.J. Abrams had written both Episode 7 and 8, like if one guy wrote both movies, this wouldn't be a problem. Now, there's been talk that Rian Johnson threw away J.J. scripts, and that is definitely a possibility. But look at the character of Snoke versus the character of Snoke in Last Jedi. Snoke in Force Awakens is very, very warm to Kylo Ren. He's very relaxed. Even though Starkiller Base gets blown up, he doesn't freak out over it. He doesn't have a meltdown. He doesn't scream and have the wispy mustache thing going at all. He calmly, tells Hux, get Kylo Ren and get off the planet, and I'll complete the training. Very calmly he says that. Snoke is very relaxed, very mysterious in the first film. In Last Jedi, he's a freaking Saturday morning cartoon villain. He's very condescending toward Kylo. You lost to a girl and you're no Vader and all these different things. Humiliating him, even though Kylo had told him that she's untrained but stronger than she knows. Snoke is just berating this guy, and then later on in the movie, when Rey does show up, he's again just playing the Emperor all over again. He wasn't a different character, whereas if you watch Force Awakens, he was very much a different character. He was much more calm than the Emperor, much more calculated than the Emperor was. He didn't, have like I said, Saturday morning cartoon madness. In this movie, he seemed to be very, aware of his surroundings. In this movie, he lets Kylo kill him because he wasn't paying attention. And it really did kind of bug me that it's a different character. It's a different character. And don't even get me started on General Hux. So in Force Awakens, General Hux is like the new Grand Moff Tarkin. He's proud of his weapon. He's proud of his army. He's, him and Phasma have worked together to cultivate this military. He wasn't a bumbling idiot. And yet in Last Jedi, almost every scene he's in is played up for comedy. Even the deleted scene where Rose bites his finger, he becomes a literal comedic joke. He goes from being Space Hitler to Space the Dictator from Charlie Chaplin. It literally became a joke. He was not like that in Force Awakens. He got made fun of by every character. Kylo's throwing him around. The Supreme Leader is dead. Long live the Supreme Leader. There's so many things that are just inconsistent with Hux. But anyways, back to Snoke. Snoke tells Kylo, he's like, your father is on the Millennium Falcon. And the whole conversation was, can you do what you need to do? And then Kylo says, by the grace of your training, I will not be seduced. So Kylo, in his mind, thinks if he kills his father, he will go all the way to the dark side. That was the idea, that he's teeter-tottering on what side to pick, and he's being torn apart, like he said with his own words. Then he chooses to kill his father and go all the way dark. But yet, Snoke doesn't even care. And he even tells Snoke, I gave up everything for you. And so that's what leads to Kylo betraying Snoke. But it's just one of those things where, Snoke just was so much of a douche to Kylo in this movie. He's never going to betray me, this and that. And it's obvious that he was, especially when you watch it back. So it's like if Rian Johnson had been in charge from the beginning, and I'm not saying he's a great writer, because I said earlier in this video that he's not, these problems wouldn't have happened, or if JJ had stayed in charge. It just really seemed like he totally got the characters of Finn, Poe, and Snoke and Hux just all wrong. And even though Andy Serkis and Domhnall Gleeson were amazing in this freaking movie, they were great actors in everything they do. And I loved Serkis as Snoke in Last Jedi because he was just a great villain. It was a different character. He was much more chill and much more relaxed. And really, it's just funny to me that the entire story behind Force Awakens was the build-up to finally seeing Luke Skywalker. And then when you watch Last Jedi, which is the chapter 2 of that big story, he ends up being a big disappointment. So it's almost like you feel like you wasted your time and that everybody was scrambling to get to Skywalker when, at the end of the day, it meant nothing. It did end up meaning something at the end of Last Jedi, but at the beginning it didn't. So it was just very strange. Even Snoke, said that he feared Skywalker. coming back and all that. And it really doesn't make any sense because Luke ran away because of what he did to Kylo, and he had been gone for several years. Couldn't Snoke have been smart enough to figure out that, hey, this dude's a broken man, he's out of the Force because of what I did to his nephew, because I made his nephew evil? Why should I even fear this guy? Again, it just didn't make any sense. There's just stuff that when you connect two movies, don't connect. So at the end of the day, even though I don't know if I really hate Last Jedi, I guess I hate what it did. I hate that the movie feels claustrophobic. There's no, like, real exploration of the Star Wars universe. Most of it's on these ships and this whole chase scene, you know, which I thought was kind of a boring thing. It just feels, you know, very disjointed. It feels very empty and not satisfactory at all. You know, I don't totally despise the movie. Part of me does like it. I have a soft spot for certain scenes, of course, but it's still bad. Like, I thought I was going to end up liking it more when I saw it the 7th and 8th time, and I actually wound up liking it less. So, how do you feel about it? Has the movie grown on you? I've seen a lot of people talk about how much they hate this movie now, and it's really becoming a thing. I don't know if people just didn't see it in theaters in December, or if they saw it again and realized its problems, but it sucks because conceptually the ideas that Rian Johnson had weren't really bad necessarily, but the execution was just a mess, bro. Just really strange timing and strange editing. I mean, you don't even get to, like, the Canto Bight stuff to, like, 45 minutes into the movie, and they introduced the Rose character at the end of, or what I think is close to the end of Act 1, which is 45 minutes into this damn thing, like something like that, 45, 48, I don't remember. And she's a big part of Act 2, but she's really not a part of Act 2 because only a portion of Act 2 takes place there. So, again, just really weird the way that he edited this movie together. Just very strange timing, and it's got problems. Anyways, I'll talk more about that in the future if you want me to. Thanks for checking out the video. Let me know what you think, and, well, bye.